Azura Keene stood before the polished mahogany casket and felt nothing. No pain, no tears, no fear. Just a void, cold and thick, like the mud of a rainy Chicago autumn beneath her boots. The casket lid was screwed shut tight. The funeral home director, a thin man with a pale, somber face, had whispered to her the day before, "Best not to open it, ma'am. The condition, it's terrible. The car burned almost completely. Better to remember him as he was." She had nodded then, seeing no point in arguing. Now, standing in the cemetery facing the grave, she thought, "Is it really true? Is Drayton really in there?" Her mother-in-law, Eudora Keene, was wailing loudly, heart-wrenchingly, draped over the casket. Her robust frame shook with convulsions of grief, her lipstick smeared across her tear-stained cheeks. She turned toward Azura, and a spark of fury ignited in her eyes. "This is all your fault. You made him miserable. He was running from you, working like a dog while you sat at home demanding. Azura remained silent. What could she say? That for 10 years she had been an obedient wife who cooked, cleaned, waited for her husband, and never asked where the money went, despite having a teaching degree? But Drayton had insisted she stay home, taking care of the house and not wasting time in classrooms for pocket change. Drayton's uncle, Thaddeus Keene, stood at a distance with his hands in his pockets. His bushy gray mustache bristled. His gaze was hard and accusing. He had never hidden the fact that he considered Azura unworthy of his nephew. Now he looked at her as if she herself had pushed Drayton under the wheels of that truck. The neighbors whispered. Zinnia Mosley, a young mother from their building, approached and awkwardly hugged Azura around the shoulders. "Stay strong, sugar. If you need anything, I'm here." Azura felt grateful, but couldn't utter a single word. The casket was lowered. The earth hit the lid with a dull thud. Eudora Keene fell to her knees, howling. Thaddeus turned on his heel and headed for his car without a word. Azura remained there by the edge of the grave long after everyone else had left. The wind from Lake Michigan whipped her dark coils and froze her face. She stared at the fresh mound of earth and thought, "Why am I not crying?" 3 days after the homegoing service, there was a knock at the door. Azura opened it to see 2 men in business suits. One was tall with a square jaw. The other was shorter, holding a folder. "Azura Keene?" the tall one confirmed. "Yes." "We're from a collections agency. You need to review some documents." She let them in, not really knowing why. The men entered the living room and spread papers across the table. "Your husband, Drayton Keene, took out several loans from different banks. The total debt currently amounts to $200,000. According to the contracts, in the event of death, the obligations pass to the spouse. Here is your signature." Azura looked at the documents in disbelief. The signature looked like hers. Yes, but she didn't remember signing anything like this. I didn't sign this." "You have 30 days for voluntary payment," the shorter man replied coldly. "Otherwise we will go to court. Your assets will be seized and auctioned." When they left, Azura collapsed onto the hallway floor, burying her head in her hands. $200,000? From where? For what? Drayton always said he earned good money, that everything was under control. And now he was dead, and she was left alone with this monstrous weight. She called her mother, Ophelia Raines, who lived in Detroit. "Mama, I have a problem." Her voice trembled. "What is it, baby?" Azura told her. Her mother fell silent, then sighed heavily. "I told you that depending on a man is dangerous, but I don't have that kind of money, Azura. I live on a pension, you know that. Tavarius might be able to give you something, but it won't be much." Her older brother, Tavarius, called her an hour later. "Azura, I'll do what I can, but I got a family, kids. I can scrape together maybe $1,000. Any more is impossible." "Thanks, Tavarius," she whispered. $1,000 against $200,000. Ridiculous. Azura sold the condo. It was the only thing she had left, an older unit on the south side of Chicago. It sold fast, but the money barely covered part of the debt. The rest remained on her like a gigantic stone. She moved into a tiny room in a cheap boarding house on the other side of the city. 130 square feet, shared kitchen, bathroom down the hall. The neighbors were day laborers, students, lonely seniors. She looked for work for 2 weeks. Her teaching degree was useless. She'd been out of the workforce too long. The schools demanded recent experience. The supermarket turned her down. A bar turned her down. Finally, she saw a sign. Service station attendant wanted, shifts, no experience required. She went to the interview. The manager, a man around 50 with dull eyes, observed her without interest. "Can you handle the work?" "Yes." "All right, you start the day after tomorrow, 8 to 8 shift. We'll train you here." The gas station was near the highway on the outskirts of the city. The wind always blew there, freezing to the bone even on mild days. Azura started her first shift in early October. She was greeted by Maud Tolliver, the shift supervisor, a woman of over 50 with a weathered face and cold gray eyes. "Keen." She looked her up and down. "All right, I'll explain quick. Here are the pumps. Customers are all types, lots of folks with attitudes. Don't fight, but don't let 'em walk all over you. Understood? And don't stand around. Look, there's a line already." The first few days were hell. Her hands smelled of gasoline. Her back ached from standing all day. Her head buzzed with exhaustion. Customers shouted, demanded, some threw insults. Azura gritted her teeth and did her job. 2 other people worked on the shift with her. Vonda Banks, a chatty woman around 40, commented on every customer the moment they left. "Did you see that? Comes in a Range Rover and counts pennies one by one. Cheapskate." "Vonda, mind your business," Maud grunted. "Oh, girl, I'm just saying." The third was Tyrell Moss, a night student who worked the graveyard shift. He spoke little, but one day, when Azura couldn't lift a heavy crate of motor oil, he walked over silently and helped her. "Thanks," she told him. He nodded and walked away. A month passed. Azura got used to the cold, the fatigue, the rhythm. She learned to disconnect her emotions, to do what had to be done. The debt collectors didn't leave her alone. They called every day, sent texts, demanded meetings. Once, they even came to the gas station. It was a Friday, almost the end of the shift. Azura was already thinking about going back to the boarding house and collapsing into bed when a black sedan pulled up to the pump. Out stepped the same 2 men, Square Jaw and Folder Guy. "Keen!" the tall one shouted. "About time we found you." Maud Tolliver peered out from the booth. "Who are they?" "Collectors," Azura whispered. "You ain't starting no mess here. Get out!" Maud yelled. "Just talking to her and we're leaving," the man replied calmly. They approached Azura. She felt her hands start to tremble. "Think we forgot?" the tall one hissed. "Think hiding out here ends everything?" "I'm working. I'll pay what I can." "You're paying crumbs. We need real figures here." "I don't have any more." "You'll get it. Sell something. Borrow it. We don't care. But if we don't see $5,000 in 2 weeks, we're going to court." And then they garnish everything. They left. Azura stood motionless. Maud walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. "Hold on, child. Sometimes you gotta survive worse things." A week later, something happened that changed her life forever. It was Saturday. The day was overcast and windy. Azura was filling the tank of an old Chevy Impala when a sleek black sedan pulled into the station. She recognized the brand immediately, a Mercedes Maybach, the latest model. The car stopped. A young man in a suit, evidently nervous, got out from the driver's seat and headed toward the cashier. Then, a tall black man, about 45, wearing an expensive cashmere coat, stepped out from the back. His face was firm, decisive, with dark, penetrating eyes. He looked around, took out his phone, and dialed a number. Azura heard fragments. "Yes, I know, but we're running late." "Okay, I'll try again." He hung up and told the driver, "Kojo, we're in a hurry." The driver nodded. The man leaned against the car and closed his eyes. He looked exhausted and tense. Tyrell started filling his tank, while Azura stepped aside to not intrude and checked her phone. A call rang. Unknown number. Again. Yes, Keen. We want the money. I can't right now. We don't care. Your time is up. Please, one more week. I'll find something. Not 1 week. Pay or court. The voice was hard, implacable. Azura felt a lump in her throat. She turned away so no one would see her expression. Please. She didn't realize the man in the coat was watching her. He had heard the desperate tone in her voice. He had seen how she gripped the phone with anguish. When she hung up and turned around, he was already at her side. Their gazes met. In his eyes, there was something strange, not pity, but calculation. Excuse me, he said calmly. I need your help. Azura looked at him, not understanding. In 3 hours, I have an important meeting at a restaurant. I need you to play my wife. A meeting, a dinner. I will pay you whatever you ask. Azura thought she heard wrong. What? Did you hear me? I need a wife for 1 night. It's a business meeting. I need to project stability. I can pay you $5,000 right now. In cash. $5,000, the exact amount the collectors demanded. I can't, she stammered. This is absurd. I know it sounds strange, but I don't have time to explain. I need an answer now. He handed her a card. Lucius Sterling, CEO. It's just a business dinner, he added. Nothing illegal. Just sit next to me and follow the conversation. Nothing more. Azura looked at the card. $5,000. She could close the first installment. Breathe for another month. Okay, she heard herself say. I accept. Lucius nodded as if that answer was expected. Perfect. What is your name? Azura. Kojo, pop the trunk. The driver opened it. Inside were an evening gown, fine hosiery, a box with shoes, and a clutch. Is this for me? Azura asked. Yes, Lucius replied. I've stopped at 3 stations looking for someone with your profile. Not too young, not too flashy. Natural. You fit. A chill ran through Azura. He had planned this. He was prepared. Go change. We don't have time. Azura ran to the employee restroom. The charcoal gray dress fit her perfectly. It was elegant and understated. The shoes were comfortable. The makeup kit had shades perfect for her skin tone. She washed her face, applied a touch of foundation, and fixed her hair. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. She was no longer a gas station attendant with a grease-stained jacket. She was a confident, attractive, poised black woman. She got into the car. Lucius sat beside her. Kojo started the engine. Listen closely, Lucius said. We are Lucius and Azura Sterling, married for 10 years. We met at a conference in Chicago. We have no children. You used to work in a museum. Now you focus on the home. You like reading and jazz. You hate loud parties. We just got back from Italy. We visited Rome and Florence. Repeat. Azura repeated it. Lucius nodded. Again. They rehearsed the entire way. Lucius was tough, but patient. He asked questions, corrected her, asked again. By the time they arrived at the restaurant, Azura almost believed she had been married to him for 10 years. Very good, Lucius said. You have a good memory. Thanks. The restaurant was luxurious, located downtown in the Loop. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, waiters in tuxedos. Azura held onto Lucius's arm. He squeezed her hand gently. Relax, he whispered. You look radiant. Just smile and participate a little in the conversation. They were led to the table. Waiting for them were a man and a woman, both around 50, expensive clothes, an air of importance. The Abernathys, Lucius whispered. Azura smiled, shook hands, listened. The conversation revolved around business, the market, investments. Azura spoke little, just enough. She tried to appear serene, secure, impeccable. And then she saw him, in the corner of the room, by the window. Beard, mustache, thin-rimmed glasses, expensive suit. but she recognized him instantly. Drayton. Her husband. The man she had buried. The one who had supposedly burned to death in a car. The one who had left her in debt. Alone. Destroyed. He was alive. Sitting across from an elegantly dressed woman, laughing, holding her hand, kissing her cheek, Azura froze, her skin going cold. The world went blurry. She couldn't hear anything. She only saw Drayton, happy, relaxed, alive. Lucius leaned toward her. "Azura, darling, are you okay?" she stammered. "Honey, can you accompany me to the restroom for a moment?" "Of course. Excuse us. We'll be right back," Lucius told the couple. They walked away down the hallway where no one could see them. Azura was breathing with difficulty. "That man," she whispered. "He's my husband." Lucius frowned. "What?" "The one in the corner. That's Drayton. He's supposed to be dead. I buried him a month ago." Lucius took a discreet glance toward the dining room and then looked back at her. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I lived with him for 10 years. I'd recognize him anywhere, in any guise. The beard, the mustache, the glasses. It's a good disguise, but it's him." Lucius stayed silent for a few seconds, reflecting. His expression remained unreadable, but a cold, sharp glint appeared in his eyes. Then he said in a low voice, "We need to have a very serious talk." Azura nodded. She looked back at Drayton. He raised his glass, toasted. He didn't see her. He didn't even look in her direction. Azura forced herself to straighten up. Lucius was right. First, they had to finish dinner, play her role to the end, because now she had a goal and she knew what she would do. She would get everything back. She would prove he was alive and force him to pay for every tear, for every sleepless night, for every fear. Azura Keen took Lucius's arm and returned with him to the table as if nothing had happened. She sat down, smiled, raised her glass, and said calmly, "To our meeting." Lucius Sterling looked at her with respect and raised his glass too. The meeting lasted another hour. Azura sat upright, smiled, supported the conversation. Inside, everything was boiling, but on the outside, she remained calm, even elegant. Lucius cast furtive glances at her from time to time, with surprise, with interest. She played her role to perfection, as if she had been born the wife of a successful businessman. Lucius's partners, Clarence and Etta Abernathy, discussed supply conditions. Azura intervened with brief, precise comments. Sometimes she asked questions. She felt her presence mattered. The Abernathys clearly valued that Lucius had come with his wife. It added solidity and stability. Etta smiled. "I suppose you must be exhausted from all this business talk." "No, not at all," Azura smiled. "I find it interesting. Besides, Lucius hardly ever talks about work at home. It's nice to hear the details." Etta let out a laugh. "Mine, Clarence, is the same, a quiet one." Abernathy snorted but nodded with a smile. Drayton was still in the corner. Azura tried not to look at him, but out of the corner of her eye, she saw how he entertained his companion. A well-groomed, elegant black woman, around 45. She laughed out loud, touched his arm, leaned toward him. Drayton seemed satisfied, relaxed, not a trace of guilt or fear. Finally, the meeting came to an end. The Abernathys said their goodbyes, agreeing to call on Monday. Lucius walked them to the exit, while Azura remained at the table, bowing her head as if she were typing something on her phone. Drayton stood up, helped his companion with her coat. They walked toward the door. As they passed Azura's table, he didn't even look at her. He didn't recognize her. Just some woman sitting in a restaurant. Azura followed him with her gaze. When the door closed behind them, she let out a breath. Lucius returned and sat across from her. "Now tell me everything," he said in a low but firm voice. Azura nodded. She focused and began to speak, calmly, piece by piece, without hysteria. She told him about her marriage to Drayton, how he insisted she not work, how a month ago she was told he had died in a traffic accident, the closed casket, the funeral, the debts. $200,000, she said. "I didn't know anything about those loans, but the signature on the documents is mine. The handwriting analysis confirmed it. Maybe he gave me family papers to sign, and I didn't read them. I trusted him. I sold the condo, moved to a cheap boarding house, started working at the gas station. But it's not enough. The collectors are hunting me down. They want money. Lucius listened in silence, without interrupting her. When she finished, he remained thoughtful and asked, "Are you sure it's him?" "Absolutely. I lived with him for 10 years. I would recognize him anywhere. The beard, the mustache, the glasses are a good disguise. But it's him." Lucius stayed quiet for a few seconds. "This is a very serious crime. Forgery of death documents, faking a death, fraud." "I know," Azura said quietly. "But how do I prove it? Who is going to believe me? I'm an indebted gas station attendant. On paper, he is dead." Lucius looked at her intently. "Do you want me to help you?" "Yes." "Why should I?" Azura held his gaze. "Because you are a just person. At least that seemed to be the case." Lucius Sterling observed her in silence. His gaze was evaluating, but not cold. He weighed her words, testing her firmness. "You're right," he said finally. "I don't like injustice. But helping with something like this is serious. Time, money, risks." "I understand," Azura replied. "That's why I'm not asking for charity. I want a deal." Lucius arched an eyebrow. "What kind of deal?" "I forfeit your $5,000 for tonight. In exchange, you help me prove Drayton is alive. Involve the right people. When everything is resolved, when the debts pass back to his name, I will settle my debt with you. I will work at your company for as long as it takes, for free if necessary." Lucius smiled sideways. "Do you really think your work is going to cover the costs of a lawyer and a private investigator?" "No," Azura answered sincerely. "I don't think so. But it's all I can offer. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for an opportunity." Lucius kept silent for a moment, then took out his phone and dialed. "Elena, move tomorrow's meeting to Tuesday and find me the contact for Esau Bingham, the attorney. It's urgent. Thanks." He put the phone away and looked at Azura. "If we get into this, it will be until the end. No scenes, no breakdowns. Are you ready?" "I am," she said firmly. "Good. We start tomorrow. I also know a detective, ex-homicide trusted man. He will gather the information. The lawyer will prepare the legal side, but the main work is yours. You will have to remember everything about your husband." "Everything that can be useful, I will remember," Azura promised. Lucius nodded, signaled the waiter, and paid the bill. They left the restaurant. Outside, it was cool, a light breeze blowing off the lake. Koja was already waiting by the car. "Now we take you home," Lucius said. "Yes, please," Azura nodded. They rode in silence. Azura looked out the window, replaying what had happened. In the morning, she was at the gas station, freezing and exhausted. Now she was in a luxury car next to a man who had offered to help her. It all seemed unreal. "You did very well tonight," Lucius said suddenly. "The Abernathys liked you. I think the deal will go through." "Thank you," she replied softly. "You have intuition. You knew when to speak and when to be quiet. That's not common." Azura didn't know how to respond. The car stopped in front of the old peeling building of the boarding house. "Here," she said. Lucius looked at the sad facade, the chipped walls. "Tomorrow at 10. Come to this address." He handed her a card. "It's my company's office. We will meet with the lawyer." "Okay." Azura took the card. "Thank you." "Don't mention it. Get some rest, Azura. Good night." She got out of the car, went up to her room, changed clothes, and sat on the bed. Only then did she fully comprehend what had happened. Drayton was alive. He had deceived her, left her with debts, and was now living with another rich, perfectly groomed woman. Azura lay down and closed her eyes. The exhaustion of the day crushed her, but sleep didn't come. Between wakefulness and dreams, images mixed. Drayton at the restaurant, his smile, his hand on that woman's shoulder, the closed casket, the debt collectors, the gas station. She turned over, hugging the pillow. She had to sleep. No, she wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to pity herself. She was going to fight. Tomorrow would be another day. In the morning, she got up early, showered in the shared bathroom, and put on dark slacks and a light blouse. She looked in the mirror, pale, beaten down by a streak of failures, but determined. She took the bus downtown and found the building, a modern business center with a glass facade. She went up to the 8th floor. On the door, a plaque. Sterling and Associates, Logistics and Supply. She entered. At the reception sat a middle-aged woman, serious, in office attire. Upon seeing Azura, she smiled politely. "You must be Azura. Mr. Sterling is waiting for you. Go right in, please." She escorted her to a spacious office. Lucius was seated behind a large desk, and beside him was a man around 55, gray-haired, with glasses and a folder in his hand. "Azura," Lucius stood up. "Let me introduce you to Esau Bingham, attorney at law. He will take your case." Bingham extended his hand. "Pleasure. Lucius has already told me the basics, but I need details. Sit down." Azura sat. The lawyer opened a notepad and took a pen. "Tell me everything from the beginning, in order." She spoke for over an hour. Bingham asked precise questions, took notes, frowned occasionally. When she finished, he shook his head. "The situation is complicated, but I'll handle the case," he said. "First, we must obtain all loan documents. Second, request the full file on your husband's death. Third, look for witnesses who have seen him alive after the official date of death. Fourth, examine the signatures on the contracts." "And how do we prove the man in the restaurant is my husband?" Azura asked. "Photos, videos, testimonies, but that's not enough. We need identification, fingerprints, DNA. For that, we will need the police." "And will they believe us?" Bingham smiled lopsidedly. "If we bring them proof, yes. The police don't like being played. Faking a death is something very serious." Lucius intervened. "Esau, how much time to prepare everything?" "About 2 weeks to gather documents and preliminary information. Then we file the complaint. From there, it depends on how fast they move." "Good. Start. I'll cover all expenses." The lawyer nodded and gathered his papers. "Azura, I will call you in a few days. I'll prepare a list of questions. And another thing. Try to remember everything about your husband. Habits, friendships, places he frequented. Anything could be useful." "Okay," she promised. Bingham left. Lucius poured a coffee and offered it to Azura. She accepted. "There is something else," Lucius said. "I've already spoken to a detective. He's coming this afternoon. Cyrus Red, former homicide inspector. Smart, experienced, meticulous. If your husband shows up anywhere, Red will find him." "Thank you." Azura felt a spark of hope ignite within her, for the first time in a long time. "Don't thank me yet," Lucius smiled. "The work has only just begun." That afternoon, Azura returned to the office. Cyrus Red turned out to be a man around 60, sturdy, with piercing dark eyes and calm manners. He listened to her story, asked short, direct questions. "Do you have photos of your husband?" he asked. "Yes, on my phone." Azura showed him several. Red studied them carefully. He asked her to text them to him. "Beard and mustache can change the face, but not completely," he said. "The shape of the skull, the ears, the gaze, that can't be disguised. Describe the woman who was with him." Azura described Genevieve. That's what she had heard Drayton call her. Tall, very groomed, expensive jewelry, confident mannerisms. "So she's a woman with money," Red reflected. "It's likely he's living off her. That makes it easier for us. There aren't that many like that in the city. I'll check my contacts. Beauty salons, boutiques, restaurants, they know them everywhere." "And then?" Azura asked. "Then I'll find out where they live. I'll put surveillance on them, gather evidence, photos, videos. Then to the lawyer and the police. It all sounded simple, logical, but Azura understood that in practice, it would be much harder. Cyrus, what if he finds out we're following him? He won't find out, the detective replied calmly. I've been doing this for 30 years. If my targets noticed, I would have been out of work a long time ago. Lucius walked Red to the exit and returned to the office. You're tired, he told Azura. Go home, rest. Tomorrow I'll call you and tell you what's new. Azura nodded. She was truly exhausted, physically and emotionally, but a small flame burned inside her. She wasn't alone anymore. Now she had allies. 2 days passed. Red called on Wednesday afternoon. Got him, he said bluntly. The woman is named Genevieve St. Clair, 47 years old, owner of a small chain of beauty salons, 3 centers in the city. Good income. Lives in a luxury condo in Gold Coast. Living with her is a man who introduces himself as Drayton Kane. Yes, he changed 1 letter in the last name. No official document exists in his name. Seems he avoids paperwork, drives her car, spends her money. A typical kept man. Azura listened, gripping the phone. Are you sure it's him? I took photos, sending them right now. A minute later, the images arrived. Drayton leaving the building and getting into the car. Drayton at a coffee shop with Genevieve. Drayton at a supermarket. Without the beard, he would look exactly the same as before. It's him, Azura whispered. Then we proceed, Red said. I'll gather more material. In a week, we'll have a full dossier. Azura told everything to Lucius. He listened and nodded. Good. Bingham has already requested the case file. It should arrive tomorrow, then we start the official part. The next day, the lawyer called Lucius and asked him to come to his office. Azura was also invited. On the desk lay a thick folder. The file on the death of Drayton Keene, Bingham said. I've reviewed it all, and there is something very interesting. No DNA test was done. The body was identified by clothing, documents in the pocket, and by witness statements, that is, yours, Azura, and your mother-in-law's. But I didn't see the body, Azura exclaimed. The casket was closed. Exactly, the lawyer nodded. The protocol states that you confirm the identity of the deceased based on clothing and personal effects. Pure formality. Sloppy work. The inspector who handled the case is already retired. Probably didn't want to complicate his life. Closed the matter quickly. So no one checked if it was really Drayton? Lucius frowned. No one. And now look at this. The day before the alleged accident, a homeless man disappeared in the city, a man of age and build very similar to Drayton's. They looked for him, didn't find him. Case closed. Azura felt a chill run down her spine. Do you think... I think your husband planned everything very carefully, Bingham said severely. He found someone suitable, lured him, killed him, or simply used his corpse, dressed him in his clothes, planted his documents, caused the accident, and voila, Drayton Keene, officially dead. Azura covered her face with her hands. It was horrifying. Drayton might have killed a man. Why? To run from debts, for that woman. And now what? Lucius asked. Now we go to the police, the lawyer replied firmly. With all this, with Red's photos and Azura's complaint, we will demand the opening of a criminal case, forgery of documents, fraud, and possibly homicide. Azura raised her head. I'm ready, she said. I'll go and file the report. Lucius looked at her with respect. Then first thing tomorrow I'll go with you. Bingham nodded. Me too. Together they'll pay more attention to us. Azura left the office with the feeling of being on the edge of a precipice. Tomorrow a real war would begin, but she wasn't afraid. She was ready for that war. The morning dawned cold and gray. Azura woke up early and stood under the shower for a long time trying to calm herself. Today she would go to the police. Today she would officially declare that her husband was still alive, that he had deceived everyone, that he might have killed a man. She dressed in her best clothes, a dark gray suit she had bought before Drayton's death for potential official meetings. Back then, it seemed her life would have important events. There weren't any. Until today. Lucius sent the car. Kojo took her to the office, and from there the three of them, Azura, Lucius, and Bingham, left for the Chicago police headquarters. The building was gray and imposing on the outside. Inside, blue walls and scuffed floors. Bingham advanced confidently to the desk sergeant, introduced himself, and asked to speak with a detective. The officer, a young lieutenant, looked at them with curiosity. "What is this about?" "A complaint for document forgery and possible homicide," Bingham said clearly. The lieutenant straightened up. "Have a seat. I'll notify the investigator." They waited about 20 minutes. Finally, a black woman around 40 appeared. Brown eyes, impeccable uniform, short, natural hair. She introduced herself. "Detective Sergeant Nia Cross, come to my office." The office was small, full of filing cabinets and shelves with binders. Cross took a seat behind the desk and indicated the chairs opposite. "I'm listening." Azura began to speak. She told the story calmly, in an orderly fashion, leaving out no details. The detective listened, occasionally asking questions, taking notes. When Azura finished, the sergeant said, "These are very serious accusations. Do you have proof?" Bingham put a folder on the desk with documents, Red's photos, and the file on Drayton's death. "Here is the original file. As you can see, no DNA test was performed. The identification of the body was purely formal, and here," he pointed to the photos, "images of the man posing as another person, but keeping the same first name and an almost identical last name, Kane instead of Keene, and this is the data on a homeless man missing the day before the alleged accident." Cross examined the papers carefully. Her face remained neutral, but Azura saw a keen interest ignite in her eyes. "You claim your husband faked his own death using the corpse of another man?" "Yes," Azura replied firmly, "and that he now lives with another woman hiding from creditors, the law. And you?" "Yes." Cross looked at Lucius. "And who are you in this story?" "Witness," Lucius replied calmly. "I saw this man in a restaurant. Azura identified him as her husband, and I decided to help her." "Yes, why?" "I don't like people being deceived." The detective tapped the desk gently with her pen, thoughtful. "All right, I'll take the complaint. I'll open a preliminary investigation. If your words are confirmed, we will initiate criminal proceedings. But I warn you, if it turns out you are defaming a person, the consequences will be severe." "I'm not making anything up," Azura said firmly. "I'm telling the truth." "We'll see." Cross started filling out forms. Azura signed the complaint. Bingham left his contact details. Lucius, too. "Within a week, we will perform the necessary checks," the detective said. "I will get in touch with you." They left the building. Azura felt her legs go weak. Lucius held her by the arm. "You did very well," he said. "You were perfect." "Thank you," she whispered. Bingham nodded. "Cross is good. She won't leave this in a drawer. Now we wait." They had to wait 5 days. Azura went back to work at the gas station. Maud Tolliver, in the end, forgave that sudden disappearance and accepted her back. Vonda Banks, of course, couldn't contain her curiosity. "Where'd you go that day? With the rich guy?" "I had things to do," Azura replied dryly. "What things?" Vonda insisted. "My things." Maud raised her voice. "Vonda, stay out of folks' business." The other woman pursed her lips, annoyed, and shut up. Tyrell Moss cast several thoughtful glances at Azura in those days. Once he approached when the two were alone. "You got trouble?" "I did. Hope it gets fixed soon. If you need anything, let me know. Maybe I can help." "Thanks, Tyrell." Azura smiled. He nodded and walked away. Good kid. Pity there were so few like him. On the 6th day, Detective Cross called. "Azura, come to the station. We have news." Azura rushed to headquarters. Cross received her with a serious expression. "We ran the check. We reviewed the file, interrogated witnesses, verified information on the missing homeless man. We also identified the woman living with the man posing as Drayton Kane. Genevieve St. Clair, businesswoman. According to her own words, she met that man 6 months ago. He introduced himself as Drayton Keene, entrepreneur, and then... Azura barely breathed. Then we requested the exhumation of the body buried under the name of Drayton Keene. Azura's breath hitched. Exhumation? Yes, we have to do a DNA test. If your husband isn't in that grave, we open the criminal case. The procedure will take some time, but it is essential. Azura nodded. The idea of opening the grave was horrifying, but there was no other way. Also, Cross continued, we've put surveillance on Drayton Keene. We will cite him to testify as a supposed witness in another investigation. During the interview, we will take his fingerprints. We'll compare them with the ones on record for your husband. He has a passport, so his prints are in the system. And if he refuses to come? If he refuses, he'll already be suspicious. For now, we act like we know nothing. Simple routine. Azura felt hope growing inside. When will it be? Tomorrow. I'll inform you as soon as I have results. The next day felt endless. Azura couldn't focus on work. Maud scolded her several times. Vonda tried to pry again. Azura kept silent. Cross called her at dusk. Azura, the prints match. The man living with St. Clair under the name Drayton Keene is your husband, and we already have the DNA from the grave. The body is not Drayton Keene. It's the missing homeless man, Rufus Old Man Diggs. Azura slumped into a chair. So it was true. It was all true. And now what? She asked. Now we open a criminal case. Crimes, document forgery, fraud, homicide. Tomorrow morning we proceed with the arrest. You will have to give an official statement. I'll be there, Azura said firmly. She called Lucius and told him everything. He listened and was silent for a moment. So it's confirmed. Congratulations. You've been very brave, Azura. Thanks to you, she said sincerely. Without your help, I wouldn't have made it. Nonsense. You would have achieved it anyway, just would have taken longer. The next morning, Azura returned to the precinct. Cross met her along with several officers. We are going to proceed with the arrest, she explained. You can come with us or wait here. I'm going with you, Azura replied without hesitation. They left in 3 cars. Genevieve St. Clair's home was in a luxury gated community, high fence, perfect lawn, expensive security system. The officers rang the buzzer. Genevieve herself opened it, tall, groomed, wearing an expensive robe. Upon seeing the police, she paled. What's going on? Genevieve St. Clair, we need to speak with Drayton Keene, or Kane as he calls himself now. Is he home? Yes, but what's happening? Open up, please. Genevieve opened the gate. The police entered. Azura stayed in the car, but saw everything through the open door. Drayton came out of a room. He was in loungewear, barefoot. Upon seeing the officers, he stopped dead. Drayton Keene? Asked the operations chief. I'm Kane. What's wrong? You are under arrest on suspicion of document forgery and fraud. You have the right to... What? Drayton turned white. What forgery? What are you talking about? About faking your own death. Drayton stepped back, his face twisted in horror. I don't understand, Bum. Yes, you do. Come with us. Genevieve let out a scream. Drayton, what's happening? What death are they talking about? He turned toward her, opened his mouth, but said nothing. The officers cuffed him and took him away. Genevieve tried to follow, but one of the police stopped her. Ma'am, calm down. Everything will be clarified. Azura watched them put Drayton in the squad car. He raised his head and suddenly saw her. Their gazes crossed. In his eyes was panic, confusion, disbelief. She looked at him calmly. No hate, no satisfaction. She simply looked at him. The car started. They took Drayton away. Cross approached Azura. Now the investigation begins. You'll have to testify, participate in confrontations. Are you ready? Yes, Azura replied. I'm ready. And she truly was. Ready to go through all of it, because now she knew the truth would come to light. Drayton would answer for everything he had done, and she would get her life back. The investigation began. Drayton was taken to a detention center and assigned a public defender. Azura was called in almost every day to testify. Over and over she told the same story, how she lived with Drayton, how he forbade her to work, how suddenly she was told of his death, how she buried a closed casket, how she was stuck with his debts. Detective Sergeant Nia Cross worked with meticulousness and toughness. She requested all bank documents, reviewed one by one the supposed signatures of Azura on the loan contracts. She called in a handwriting expert. "Azura," the detective said when she received the results, "the signatures on the contracts are fake. The expert confirmed it's an imitation of your handwriting, but done by another hand. Most likely your husband." Azura closed her eyes. So he forged her signature, took out loans in her name. He had planned it all in advance, and the collectors, claiming the signature was authentic. "He wanted to dump the debts on me," she whispered. "Exactly," Cross nodded. "He took out the loans knowing he planned to disappear. He shared the liability in your name too, so that in case of his death, the banks would come for you. Textbook fraud." "And what about that man? The homeless man?" The detective's face darkened. "Rufus Diggs, 53 years old. Former construction worker, ended up on the streets due to alcohol. According to witnesses, 2 days before the accident, they saw him with a stranger. That man invited him to drink, talked to him. Then Diggs disappeared, and the next day was the alleged accident. Drayton killed him. That's what we're clarifying. But the preliminary coroner's report says Diggs died before the accident. Cause of death, poisoning by adulterated alcohol. It's possible your husband purposely gave him a poisoned bottle, waited for him to die, dressed him in his clothes, planted his documents, and staged the crash." Azura felt sick to her stomach. Drayton had killed a man, cold, calculating, for money, for a new life with his mistress. "What can he get?" she asked. "Homicide, fraud, forgery. If we prove it all, no less than 15 years. The confrontation with Drayton was set for a week later. Azura prepared for that meeting, but was still nervous. She hadn't seen him since they took him from Genevieve's house. They were brought into the detective's office through different doors. Drayton looked bad, sunken, unshaven, wearing the jumpsuit from the detention center. Upon seeing Azura, he flinched. "Sit down," Cross ordered. "Mr. Keene, do you admit you faked your own death?" Drayton remained silent. His lawyer, a young man with nervous mannerisms, leaned toward him and whispered something. "I plead the fifth," Drayton said in a hoarse voice. "Fine. Then we will take Azura's statement." Cross looked at the woman. "Tell us about your life together." Azura began to speak. She related calmly, without getting worked up, how Drayton forbade her to work, how he managed the money alone, how he was often absent talking about business trips, how shortly before the fake death he became irritable, nervous. Drayton listened without looking up. "Did you know about his relationship with Genevieve St. Clair?" Cross asked. "No. I found out about her that night at the restaurant." "Mr. Keene," the detective turned to him, "do you want to say something?" He raised his head. In his eyes was despair. "Azura," he murmured, with a broken voice, "forgive me, I didn't mean to. I got into a mess. Debts were growing and I couldn't. Genevieve offered to help, but only if I was free." "And that's why you decided to die?" Azura asked quietly. "And hang your debts on me? I thought you'd manage. You have a degree. You could find work." 10 years you kept me at home on your whim. What work, Drayton?" He lowered his head again. "I didn't think it would turn out like this." "You killed a man, Drayton. You killed him to fake your death." "No!" He stood up abruptly. "I didn't kill him. He died on his own. I just used it." "Sit down," Cross ordered icily. "Explain yourself better." Drayton slumped into the chair, breathing heavily. "I was looking for someone similar to me in height and build. I found that guy, Diggs. I started talking to him. He agreed to drink with me. I gave him the bottle. I didn't know it was bad liquor. I really bought it from some street guys. I thought it was regular moonshine. He drank, and in an hour he died. I got scared. I didn't know what to do. Then I understood it was my chance. I changed his clothes, put my documents on him, put him in the car, pushed it down the embankment, set it on fire. Azura listened in disbelief. He told it with such naturalness, as if talking about a household problem. "Are you aware of what you've done?" she asked. "I am aware." He looked at her. "But I had no choice." "There is always a choice." "You didn't have 400,000 in debt," he shouted suddenly. "You don't know what that's like." "I know perfectly well what it's like to live with those debts," Azura replied hard, "because you left them to me, and you, meanwhile, lived like a king with your rich mistress." Drayton lowered his head again. Cross stopped the recording. "Enough for today. The confrontation is over." After that meeting, Azura felt empty. She returned to the boarding house, lay on the bed, and cried all afternoon, not out of pity for herself, not out of resentment. She cried realizing she had spent 10 years beside a man she didn't really know, a man capable of killing. Lucius called her at night. "Azura, how are you?" "Fine," she lied. "You're not fine. I can hear it in your voice. Come to the office tomorrow. We need to talk." "About what?" "About your future." The next day, Azura went to Lucius's company. He received her along with Larissa Barnes, the head of human resources. Larissa was a woman around 55, kind, with a gentle character. "Azura," Lucius began, "the investigation is moving forward. The case is practically proven. The trial will be soon. Your husband will go to prison and the debts will return to his name. You will be free. But what about after?" "What do you mean?" Azura asked cautiously. "After, you're going to need a job. A real job. I want to offer you a position in my company." Azura looked at him, thrown off. "I'd love to, but I don't know how to do anything other than—" "You know much more than you think," Lucius interrupted. "That night at the restaurant you proved to be intelligent, focused, capable of adapting quickly. That is very valuable. Larissa is ready to hire you as an office assistant. Decent salary, benefits, room for growth." Larissa nodded. "We'll teach you everything necessary. Don't worry." Azura didn't know what to say. Suddenly, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, truly." "Don't thank us," Lucius smiled. "You'll earn every dollar. I'm a demanding boss." Azura laughed through her tears. "I'm not scared of demands as long as they're fair." A month later was the trial. The prosecutor read the indictment. Witnesses paraded through. Eudora Keene, Drayton's mother, cried in the courtroom, at once happy her son was alive and devastated that he would spend many years in prison. She went back to blaming everything on Azura. Thaddeus Keene remained serious, never looking up. Genevieve St. Clair also testified. She was shaken. It turned out Drayton had presented himself to her as a successful entrepreneur, recently widowed. She believed him, invested money in his projects, planned to open a joint business. "I didn't know anything," she repeated. "I thought he was an honest man." Azura looked at her without resentment. Genevieve was also a victim, just a wealthier one. Drayton sat in the dock, pale, sunken. When the judge read the sentence, he didn't move. "This court finds the defendant guilty of the crimes of homicide, fraud, and forgery of documents. He is sentenced to 14 years in prison. All credit obligations in the name of Azura Keene are annulled, and the full debt is transferred to Drayton Keene." Azura exhaled. It was over. She was free. They took Drayton away. At the door, he turned and looked at her. In his look was pleading, regret. But it was too late. Eudora lunged at Azura. "You destroyed him? You—" "He destroyed himself," Azura replied. "Calm down." Thaddeus pulled gently on his sister's arm. "Let's go, Eudora. Enough." They left. Azura stayed a moment in the almost empty room. Lucius approached and put a hand on her shoulder. "Congratulations. You won." "I didn't win," she said quietly. "I just put things back where they belong, with your help. That is winning." They left the courthouse. Outside, a bright sun shone, and it smelled of spring. Azura lifted her face to the sky and closed her eyes. "And now what are you going to do?" Lucius asked. "Live," she smiled. "Simply live." 3 months had passed. Azura moved from the boarding house to a small rental apartment, a one-bedroom not far from the office. Modest, but hers. She furnished it little by little, bought a sofa, a table, a bookshelf, hung light curtains in the windows. For the first time in a long time, she felt that space was truly hers. Work at Lucius's company turned out to be interesting and intense. The first few weeks were tough. Azura learned to handle documentation, work with software, get used to the rhythm of office life. Elena Grimaldo, Lucius's personal assistant, trained her with patience, though with high standards. "Azura, there's a mistake here," she would say, pointing to a document. "Look closer. In our work, there are no unimportant details." Azura corrected, learned, memorized. Little by little, the errors decreased. After a month, Elena praised her for the first time. "Not bad. You learn fast." The co-workers received her in different ways. Max Cohen, head of legal, was reserved and correct. Constantine, the financial analyst, observed her skeptically, but gradually softened seeing Azura worked seriously. Larissa Barnes looked after her like a daughter and often brought her homemade sweet potato pie. "Eat, eat," she would say. "You're too skinny. Gotta get your strength back." Azura smiled gratefully. These people were becoming almost like family. With Lucius, they spoke mostly about work. He was a demanding boss, made no exceptions, but always behaved fairly. Azura valued that. She didn't want special treatment. She just wanted to work and prove she could be useful. One evening, when almost everyone had left, Lucius entered her office. Azura was finishing the quarterly report. "Still here?" He was surprised. "I want to finish this today," she replied without looking up from the screen. "Azura, it's 9 p.m. Go home." "Half an hour more and it's ready." Lucius walked over and looked at the monitor. "Very good. You work more than asked. I care that everything is correct. It's admirable, but don't forget to rest. If you burn out, you're no use to anyone." Azura moved away from the computer and looked at him. "Lucius, thank you for everything. If not for you—" "Stop," he interrupted her. "You did it all alone. I just opened a door." "You gave me something more than a door. You gave me hope." Lucius was silent for a few seconds. "You know, when I saw you for the first time at the gas station, I thought, here is a person who hasn't broken despite everything. And I wasn't wrong." Azura felt her cheeks heat up. "I simply didn't want to give up. That is strength." They stayed quiet for a moment. Then Lucius smiled. "All right, finish that report. I'll wait and drive you home." "No need. I can take the bus. It's late. Don't argue." Azura nodded. Half an hour later, they went down to the car together. Kojo had already left, so Lucius drove. They traveled in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. "How is your mother?" he asked suddenly. "She's good. I call her every week. She's happy things finally got sorted out. And my brother Tavarius, too. He wanted to come see me, but I told him I'm managing. Don't want to take time from his family." "I understand." Lucius nodded. They arrived at Azura's building. She opened the car door and turned. "Thank you for the job and everything else." "Don't mention it. Get some rest, Azura. Good night." The neighbors in the building turned out to be kind. Alba, a young mother with 2 kids, often knocked on her door to borrow salt or sugar. She stayed for tea, and they chatted about everyday things. Miss Juana, the older neighbor across the hall, sometimes came by with questions. "Azura, who is that man who sometimes brings you in the car? Handsome, elegant." "My boss, Miss Juana," Azura laughed. "Oh, I thought he was a suitor." "No, just my boss." What a pity. You need to find a good gentleman. Azura shook her head. She didn't want to think about her personal life yet. She had enough with work, new experiences, and rebuilding herself. Mr. Pete, a retired railroad worker, sat in the evenings on the bench in front of the entrance. Sometimes Azura sat next to him. He wasn't much of a talker, but he was good people. One day he told her, "You're a sensible young woman. You don't complain, don't whine. Well done." "Thanks, Mr. Pete." "You keep going. My daughter, on the other hand, she's gotten delicate. Everything bothers her." Azura smiled. She liked that simple, human warmth. One day a letter arrived. It was from Bingham, the lawyer. He informed her that Drayton's case was completely closed, that all loans in her name were annulled, and there were no more claims against Azura. He also mentioned that Genevieve St. Clair had sued Drayton for damages for all the money she had spent on him, but since he had nothing, she would hardly recover anything. Azura folded the letter. She didn't care. That story was over. She didn't want to think about it anymore. That same afternoon, at the end of the day, Lucius stopped her. "Azura, I have a proposal." "I'm listening." "In a week, I have a business trip. New York, meetings with partners. Elena is sick and won't be able to go. Will you come with me? I'll need someone to help with documentation and the schedule." Azura remained thoughtful. She had never been to New York. "I will do my best to be up to the task." "I'm sure you will be. We fly Monday morning, return Wednesday. Everything on the company account, of course." "Okay, I accept." The trip to New York was intense. Meetings, negotiations, contract signings. Azura worked to the max, preparing documents, organizing meetings, controlling schedules. Lucius gave her an approving look several times. Excellent work. The afternoon of the second day, the meetings finished earlier than expected. Lucius proposed, "Azura, we have 3 free hours. Have you ever been to the Met?" "No, never." "Then let's go. You can't come to New York and not see at least one great museum." They went. The museum impressed her. Enormous halls, paintings by great masters, ancient furniture, sculptures. Azura walked mesmerized, unable to look away. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Lucius asked. "It's breathtaking," she whispered. "I've never seen anything like it." "The world is huge, Azura, and has many interesting things. Don't lock yourself between 4 walls. Live a full life." She looked at him. "You're right. I've lived too long in a cage. It's time to get out." "Exactly." They left the museum as it was getting dark. Lucius proposed dinner at a small restaurant near Central Park. They sat by the window and ordered dinner. "Azura," Lucius began, "I want to tell you something." "I'm listening." "You've changed a lot these months. You've become more confident, stronger. I'm glad I could help you." "I'm glad too. You changed my life." "You changed it yourself. I was just there at the right moment." Azura smiled. "Lucius, can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure." "Why did you offer for me to play your wife that day at the gas station? The real reason?" Lucius stared at the lights of the city through the glass for a while. "The truth, I was married 10 years ago. My wife died in a car accident. Since then, I haven't been able to get close to anyone for real. But partners kept repeating that for a serious businessman, it suits him to have a family. That night, the Abernathys were coming, conservative folks for whom family is sacred. I decided to cheat and hire an actress. I prepared it all in advance. And then I saw you, freezing, tired, but not defeated. And I thought, here's a person who will know what it is to play a role to survive." Azura listened to him, holding her breath. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I'm sorry you lost your wife." "Thank you. It was a long time ago. The pain has dulled, but it doesn't disappear completely. I suppose it never goes away entirely." "I understand." They kept silent for a moment. Then Lucius smiled. "Well, enough sadness. Let's toast to new beginnings." They raised their glasses. Azura felt something new born between them, not just boss and employee, something more. They returned to Chicago on Wednesday afternoon. Lucius took her home. She got out of the car and turned. "Thank you for the trip. It's been unforgettable." "Don't mention it. You did a magnificent job. I think you deserve a promotion. For real. I'll speak with Larissa. You've earned it." Azura smiled, went up to her apartment, sat by the window, and stared at the city at night. She felt warmth and peace in her chest. She no longer feared the future. She believed everything would be okay. A month later, they indeed proposed a promotion, Lucius's assistant for general affairs. The salary went up, responsibilities too, but she managed. One Friday afternoon, when the office was almost empty, Lucius entered her office. "Azura, today we can leave work aside. Let's go to dinner." She looked up, surprised. "Dinner? Just like that?" "Yes, just like that, without talking business. Simply two people who want to spend the evening in good company." Azura felt her heart speed up. She smiled. "Okay, but dessert is on me." Lucius laughed. "Deal." They left the office together and got into the car. They rode chatting about light things, the weather, plans for the weekend. Easy, natural, no tension. Azura looked out the window and thought about how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she was at a freezing gas station, exhausted, crushed by debts and betrayal. And now she was in a car next to a man who had helped her stand up, who had believed in her, who had become not only her boss, but something more. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't make long-term plans. She simply lived in the present. And for the first time in many years, she felt truly happy. The restaurant was small and cozy, a soul food fusion spot with live jazz. They sat at the table, ordered dinner, talked about everything and nothing, laughed. Lucius told stories from his life. Azura told him about her neighbors. When they brought dessert, Azura handed her card to the waiter. "My treat." Lucius didn't argue. He smiled. "Thank you. To you." They finished their coffee and went out to the street. It was a mild night with the scent of spring. Lucius looked at Azura. "You know, I'm glad I stopped that day at your gas station." "I'm glad too," she smiled. They walked down the street, side by side, two free people with a whole future ahead. Life sometimes deals very hard blows, but those who don't give up, those who fight to the end, always find their way to happiness. Azura had gone through betrayal, pain, and humiliation, but she didn't break, and she found the strength to start over. Because what matters isn't what happens to you. What matters is how you respond to it. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.